The laughter echoed so loud you could feel the sting in the air. A billionaire businessman, slick suit, gold watch flashing under the lights, pointed at a little girl standing nervously by the microphone. And then he sneered, "What's a janitor's daughter doing on this stage? This isn't story time at the cafeteria." The entire room froze. My heart pounded just reading about this moment, and honestly, I can't even imagine what that girl felt. She wasn't just anybody. She was the daughter of the school's black janitor, a man most people didn't even notice when he mopped the shiny floors every night. But there she was, small, maybe 10 or 11, holding a crumpled piece of paper in her hand. That paper? It had a poem written by her, words that she believed could matter. And yet, right before she could even start, this billionaire, one of the event's biggest donors, publicly humiliated her. I swear you could see parents shifting in their seats, some whispering nervously, others avoiding eye contact. Because who's going to stand up to a man like that? He owned half the companies in town. But here's where it gets crazy. The little girl didn't cry. She didn't run. She just looked at him, looked straight into his smug, rich face, and then opened her poem. Her hands were shaking. Her voice was small at first, but she started reading anyway. And I promise you, by the time she reached the last line, there wasn't a dry eye left in that entire hall. Even that billionaire, the same man who mocked her, was sitting with his head down, wiping tears away. Let me back up for a second so you really understand how powerful this night was. This wasn't some random talent show. It was the annual Future Voices Gala, where kids from different schools got to perform art, music, or poetry in front of wealthy donors. These donors were supposed to raise money for scholarships. The idea was simple: give kids from poor backgrounds a chance. Sounds noble, right? Except, let's be honest, half those rich folks weren't there for the kids. They were there for the wine, the fancy dinner, the networking. You know how it is. And one of the biggest names there was Richard Kensington. If you Google arrogant billionaire, I swear his face would probably pop up. He built his empire on real estate, hotels, and luxury brands. He loved being the loudest guy in the room. He thought money gave him the right to insult anyone. And sadly, people let him. That night, he was sitting at the front table, flashing his Rolex, bragging about his yacht in Monaco, barely even paying attention to the kids performing. Until this one little girl walked up. Her name was Maya. She had her hair tied back in a simple ponytail, wearing a hand-me-down dress her dad had ironed 3 times just to make it look fresh. She wasn't there to impress anyone with looks. She was there with words. Her poem was about her father, about dignity, about how people see a janitor as invisible, but to her, he was a hero. And Richard? The moment he heard she was the janitor's daughter, he couldn't resist. He leaned back in his chair, smirked, and let out that cruel laugh. That's when he said those words that made the whole room go silent. Now imagine being 10 years old. Imagine the most powerful man in the room mocking you before you've even spoken. Most kids would freeze. They'd run off stage. And you know what? No one would blame them. But Maya wasn't like most kids. She took a deep breath. You could almost hear her heartbeat through the microphone. And then she began. Her poem wasn't fancy. It didn't use big, complicated words. It was raw, real, straight from the heart. She said, "My father doesn't wear a suit. His shoes aren't shiny. His hands are rough. But those hands built my dreams. Those hands carry the weight you don't see. When the hall is quiet, he is still there, cleaning up the footsteps of the world. And to me, that's not weakness, that's strength." The room went dead silent. You could hear the sound of forks being put down. No one dared move. And Richard? For once, he wasn't smirking. Maya kept going. Her voice grew stronger with every line. She said, "They call him a janitor. I call him my hero. Because heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear uniforms instead of swords. But they still fight battles every day. The battles no one else sees." By now people were shifting uncomfortably, some wiping their eyes, and a few teachers were straight up crying. And then she hit the final lines, the ones that broke everyone. You laugh at him, you look down on him, but I stand here because of him. And if the world can't see his worth, then maybe the world forgot what worth really means. Boom. That was it. No music, no fancy effects, just pure truth from the heart of a little girl. The room erupted, not in claps right away, but in silence, the kind of silence that's louder than any applause. And then the clapping began, slowly at first, then louder, until the entire hall was on their feet, giving this girl a standing ovation that lasted minutes. I wish you could have seen Richard's face. The man who thought money could buy him respect was sitting there frozen. For once, someone, a child no less, had stripped away his armor of arrogance, and she didn't do it with insults. She did it with love, with truth. Witnesses said he actually got up, walked toward the stage, and stood there quietly. He didn't know what to do with himself. And then, this shocked everyone. He asked if he could say something. The organizers hesitated, but Maya just nodded. She was that brave. Richard took the mic. His voice cracked. He admitted he'd been wrong. He admitted he judged people by money, by appearances. And then he said, "Tonight, this little girl reminded me that dignity has nothing to do with wealth. It has everything to do with character." The whole hall gasped. Was this the same man who mocked her minutes ago? He went further. He turned to Maya's father, who was standing in the back of the hall in his janitor's uniform, tears streaming down his face. And Richard said, "Sir, I owe you an apology, not just for what I said tonight, but for every time I've overlooked people like you, people who actually keep the world running, while people like me take it for granted." And then, in front of everyone, he announced he'd be funding full scholarships for Maya and 10 other kids from working-class families. The crowd erupted in cheers. But here's the thing. The real victory wasn't the money. It wasn't the scholarships. It wasn't even Richard's apology. The real victory was that a 10-year-old girl stood up in the face of power and didn't let it silence her. That's the kind of courage most adults don't even have. She didn't fight fire with fire. She didn't insult back. She spoke her truth, and it shook a billionaire to his core. I don't know about you, but this story gives me chills. It reminds me that words matter, that no one is too small to make a difference, and that sometimes the people we overlook, the janitors, the cleaners, the invisible workers, are raising the strongest, bravest children you'll ever meet. So next time you see someone sweeping a floor or wiping down a table, remember Maya's poem. Remember that respect isn't earned by money or power or status. It's earned by the way you carry yourself, the way you treat others, the way you keep showing up even when the world ignores you. And who knows, maybe one day the words of someone you least expect will be the ones that change your heart forever. If you felt something listening to this story, don't forget to share it with someone who needs a reminder today. And hey, respect the people around you, because sometimes the real heroes aren't the ones in the spotlight. They're the ones quietly making the world better when nobody's watching. That's it for today's story. I'll see you in the next one.